Hi folks, HR Funk here with number 50. That's right, number 50 in my series on law enforcement qualification course challenge videos. Now if you've not seen any of the videos in this series up to this point, what I have been doing is trying to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states for the purpose of comparing and contrasting those courses and ultimately trying to determine what I think is the best law enforcement firearms qualification course in the country. And after today's video, I will finally be able to do my last comparisons, and ultimately very soon I will be picking that best law enforcement firearms qualification course. Now this series does focus on duty handgun qualification courses, and today's duty handgun qualification course comes to us from the state of West Virginia. Now if you've been following along in this series, you may recall that I was having difficulty getting a course from West Virginia. And there's a couple of things I need to tell you about what you're going to see in this video. I never did get a course from an individual agency in West Virginia or a statewide qualification course. What I did find was a section from the West Virginia legislature, and several of you also sent me links to this, that lays out the standards for law enforcement firearms qualification. I suspect what the state of West Virginia does is establish these requirements, and then they leave it up to the individual agencies and the firearms instructors in those agencies to design courses around these standards. And what the standards say, and there's not very much to this, what the standards say is the course has to have the officer undergoing qualification fire at least 32 rounds. Now that seems like an odd number to me. I don't know why 32, I don't know why 30 or 35 or 50 or whatever, but the officer has to fire 32 rounds. The stages of fire can take place at no closer to the target than 3 yards, and they have to be at least, or go back to at least 15 yards away from the target. The courses have to have both non-dominant and dominant hand shooting, but it says that they can be supported or unsupported, apparently at the discretion of the firearms instructor administering the qualification. And the minimum passing score is laid out as 75%. So that's it to the requirements I was able to find for West Virginia law enforcement handgun qualification courses. So what I've done is put together a series of drills that meet the requirements that I just laid out, and this could be a course that someone in West Virginia who is a firearms instructor for a department could put together, but it doesn't necessarily match any courses from anywhere in that state. But rather than delay this forever and ever and ever until hopefully maybe someday in the future I can get a West Virginia course, I'm going to go ahead and shoot this as a representative at least of the West Virginia standards, and then I'll go on and finish out this qualification series. So here we go. In just a minute we'll meet our challenger, and then we'll get on to firing these drills that I put together to meet the West Virginia standards. And the challenger for this West Virginia course, or at least the West Virginia standards, is my Christmas present. Some of you may recall seeing this in the video that I made back shortly after Christmas time, and you might recall that my lovely wife purchased me this as a Christmas gift. This is my Smith & Wesson Model 469. It's one of a limited number of 469s that came in a brushed nickel finish. This is not stainless steel. So I don't shoot this very often. I want to keep it in pristine condition, but I am going to use it as my challenger today against this West Virginia handgun qualification course. And here we go. I'm going to kick things off in this course from the maximum distance specified in the West Virginia standards, that being a distance of 15 yards from the target. And from that distance, I'm going to begin with the pistol in a holster, and on a signal to fire, I'm going to draw and fire 6 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 9 seconds. For the next stage, I'm up to a distance of 10 yards from the target. And from that distance, I'm once again going to start with the firearm in the holster. On a signal to fire, I'm going to draw and fire 3 rounds into the body of the target, then kneel down and perform a mandatory reload and fire 3 more rounds into the body of the target, all in a time limit of 13 seconds. For the next stage, I'm up to a distance of 7 yards from the target. And from that distance, I'm once again going to start with the firearm in the holster, and on signal to fire, I'm going to draw and fire 6 rounds into the body of the target, then sidestep to my left, reload, and fire 6 more rounds into the body of the target, all in a time limit of 16 seconds. For the next stage, I'm up to a distance of 5 yards from the target. And from that distance, I'm going to begin this time in a low ready position, and on a signal to fire, I'm going to fire 3 rounds into the body of the target, dominant hand only. Then I'll stop, transition the pistol to my non-dominant hand, and on a second signal to fire, I'll fire 3 more rounds, non-dominant hand only into the target, also in that time limit of 4 seconds. Final stage of the course, folks, and for this one, I'm up to a distance of 3 yards from the target, which is the minimum under the West Virginia standards. From that distance of 3 yards on a signal to fire, I'm going to draw and fire a failure drill. 2 shots to the body and 1 shot to the head in 2.5 seconds. And that's it for the West Virginia course, folks, or at least the West Virginia standards. And in the end, I had 1 shot outside of the preferred scoring area of the target. So of the 33 shots that I fired 1 more than was required by the course, or by the standards rather. So of the 33 shots that I fired, 32 are good hits. So that gives me a score of 96.96969696. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll just say a 97% on what is admittedly not a very challenging course. But the thing to keep in mind with what you just saw is it greatly exceeds the standards that are set up by the West Virginia legislature. There are no requirements to do reloading. There's really no requirement even to have the course timed or the stages timed. The only thing are the dominant and non-dominant hand stages, the distances, minimum and maximum, the number of rounds, that being at least 32 rounds, and the qualification standard of 75%. So what really strikes me in this is what there's not required in the West Virginia standards. Now, as I say that, I am certain that there are departments and there are firearms instructors in West Virginia that far exceed both the minimum standards in the legislature and what you just saw in this course. Again, this was very basic. I threw it together just to meet the requirements of the standards, and in doing so, I greatly exceeded them. So, again, I'm certain there are individual departments and instructors in West Virginia that go far above and beyond what you just saw, but again, the significant thing is I could have done less than I actually did and still met the West Virginia standard. And here's one last look at today's challenger. My limited edition 469 Smith & Wesson 9mm semi-auto performed flawlessly, as you saw. I let it down with 1 shot from my non-dominant hand, but the pistol performed very, very well. And again, this is a fine pistol. I am extremely happy to have this one. And thank you to my wife for such a wonderful Christmas present. And that's going to do it for this video, folks, and that wraps up the shooting portion of this series. Now I have to do my final evaluations, and there are going to be probably a couple of wrap-up videos coming, one of which where I actually announce the winner, or what I think is the best law enforcement handgun qualification course out of all the 50 states. I think I'm going to do another one where I talk about producing this series itself and some of the things that went along with it. Some of you might find that interesting, but again, this has been a journey really that started 2 years ago, and I thought it was going to be easier, I guess, than it was. I was fairly naive when I started out on this project, but it turned out to be very challenging, not just in terms of the shooting, but actually producing all these videos for a law enforcement handgun qualification course from each of the 50 states. In any case, if you have any questions or comments on this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye. Thanks for sticking around, folks. As I said earlier, this video makes number 50 in this series where I was trying to fire one qualification course from each of the 50 states, but that also means that this is number 10 in this last group of 10 qualification courses, which means it's time for all of you to vote for your favorite handgun used in this group of 10. Now, just like always, I'm going to open up voting at the end of this video, and each of you will be able to vote for your favorite handgun used in this last group of 10 qualification courses. Please only vote for one, because sometimes I get comments on the videos or text messages or whatever saying, well, I really like this one or that one, and that makes it very hard to tabulate. So please just pick your favorite and vote for just one of this group of 10, and I will compile all the results and I'll announce the winner in a future video. Probably it'll be a Wednesday morning midweek update, and I'll announce which handgun all of you picked as your favorite one from this group of 10 qualification courses. Now, behind me on the counter, I have most of the 10 pistols that were used in this group of qualification courses, and I'm going to recap those just to refresh your memory. And once this video ends, as I said, the voting will be open. Now, this video should air on Saturday, April the 10th, and you'll have until Friday, April the 16th of 2021 to pick your favorite, and you can send me those votes any way you want to. You can make it a comment in the video. If you have the contact information for my cell phone, you can send me a text message, you can send me an email or what have you. Any type of voting counts. Now, if you go to bed on Thursday night and there's a Glock that's way ahead in the polls, and you wake up on Friday morning and find that all of a sudden somehow something else won, that's just the way elections go these days, so keep that in mind. Just kidding. I'll tabulate all the incoming votes, and whichever handgun comes out on top, even if it's a Glock, yes, Skip, even if it's a Glock, I'll announce that that was the winner for this group of 10. In any case, let's get on with this recap of the pistols that I used for this last group of 10 qualification courses. And for the first candidate for your favorite firearm of this last group of 10 qualification courses, we have to wind the clock all the way back to November of 2020 to the Vermont course. And in the Vermont course, I used the H&K P30. And that's also the first one that I don't have available back here on the shelf behind me to show you, so I'll have to inset some video to help refresh your memory. And the reason I don't have it is because that was not my pistol. That was loaned to me by viewer and friend of the channel, Ben Crane. And while I didn't particularly care for the P30 itself, I do very much appreciate Ben's generosity and loaning me that pistol to use for the Vermont course. And as I said, that's the first one up for your consideration for the favorite handgun of the last 10 qualification courses. Next up was the Maryland course. And for the Maryland course, I used my Smith & Wesson Model 5904 9mm. And this was a repeat performance for the 5904. I had used that in a previous course, and I tried to, as much as possible, use a different handgun for each of these 50 qualification courses, but there were a few times that I used the same pistol for multiple courses, and this was one. Even so, I think the Smith & Wesson 5904 did well, and this is going to be the second handgun up for your consideration as your favorite one from this group of 10. One last point about the Maryland course. Several of you have asked me when I finish this series if I would go back and let you know what I think is my idea of the ideal law enforcement handgun qualification course. If you look at the Maryland course, that one, and if you recall in Maryland, the state just put out a set of guidelines, and then individual firearms instructors came up with their qualification course based on those guidelines. The Maryland course is my own creation, and it very much is what I would use as a qualification course if it were up to me. Now, I would make a couple of changes with regard to scoring and a couple of other aspects of that course that I had to comply with in order to meet the Maryland guidelines, but that very much, about 85% of that probably would be what I would use as my ideal law enforcement handgun qualification course. So for those of you who are interested in seeing what I would choose or what I would design, just go back and look at the Maryland course and you'll get a very good idea of what that would be. On we go to the Idaho course. And for the Idaho course, we have the only 1911 variant out of this group of 10. This is my Smith & Wesson model SW1911, which is a commander size alloy frame semi-auto pistol chambered for the 45 ACP cartridge. And this is going to be number 3 up for your consideration. This is one of my favorite handguns in my collection. It's one of my favorite 1911 variants and one that I carry the most often because it is very lightweight. The SW1911 PD has a scandium alloy frame. I don't think I mentioned that before, which does make it very lightweight. Even so, it handles the recoil of the 45 ACP cartridge very well. And this is going to be the next one up for your consideration as your favorite handgun out of this group of 10 qualification courses. And on we go. Next up was the Washington course, and for the Washington course I have the second firearm that I don't have behind me here on the bench. And for that course I was using a Glock 17 that was also loaned to me. Again, I'll inset some video to refresh your memory. The Glock 17 did very well on that course, and even though I don't particularly care for Glock pistols, I cannot deny the fact that they work very well, and for that Washington course the Glock 17 did a very good job. So again, that's the next one up for your consideration as your favorite handgun for this group of 10 qualification courses. Next was the Hawaii course, and you may recall the Hawaii course was actually a course for retired law enforcement officers. And for that course, I used my CZ P01. This is a recent addition to my collection, and it's a pistol that I like very much. It did a fine job on the Hawaii course. And this little pistol is just very carryable. If you recall when I did my review of the P01, it went through extensive testing. It is approved as a NATO sidearm, so I think that's significant. And the P01 is next up for your consideration as your favorite handgun from this group of 10 qualification courses. After the Hawaii course, I went on a bit of a winter hiatus because of the snow and cold temperatures here. So it seemed appropriate that when I came back from that, the next course up was the Alaska course. And for the Alaska course, I used my IWI Masada 9mm pistol. I've done quite a bit of shooting with the Masada at this point. I like this pistol a lot. I think it's a somewhat underrated 9mm pistol. You can see that I have removed the Hilux TD3, and the reason that's no longer installed on here is because I'm waiting for the newer version of that same sight to arrive, and when it does, it's probably going to become a permanent resident on top of my IWI Masada. In any case, I used with the Masada for the Alaska course, and that's next up for your consideration in this vote. Next came the Nevada course, and for the Nevada course, I used a pistol that many think is the finest combat handgun ever devised, and that is the Glock 19 9mm semi-automatic pistol. This is going to be next up for your consideration. It performed well on the Nevada course. Again, as I said with the Glock 17, I cannot complain about these pistols. I used 3 of them, 3 different Glocks throughout this series of 50 qualification courses. They all performed very well. Even the very first one I used, which was a Glock 23, where the front sight came loose and it was actually spinning around in the slide while I was trying to shoot, and I still didn't shoot all that bad even though the front sight was spinning around. So in any case, the Glock 19 was the one that I used in this group of 10, and that's next up for your consideration. The Kentucky course was next, and for the Kentucky course, I used my Smith & Wesson Model 1076 10mm pistol. This is a decocker, and I don't think I mentioned it in that video, but it does have the decocking lever here in front of the grip. So it decocks similar to a SIG pistol. And these were used by the FBI for a short period of time. This particular one was a Kentucky State Police pistol. And I did get some information from a gentleman who's retired from the Kentucky State Police after I completed that video. And he was going to look into the unit number that was on the bottom of the magazine plate that I showed you in that video. And maybe I'll be able to find out who actually was issued this pistol and get a little bit more history about it, which I think is very cool. In any case, this is the next one for your consideration as your favorite firearm out of this group of 10 qualification courses. Next up was the Rhode Island course, which featured my only wheel gun out of this group of 10, And I've tried to feature revolvers frequently throughout this series. And if you go back through all the 50 videos, you'll see that I've used quite a few different revolvers. And part of the reason I did that is to demonstrate that even though revolvers aren't really widely used in law enforcement these days, they're still very capable of passing those qualification courses. And truthfully, there are probably still a lot of police officers that would be adequately served by a good wheel gun. In any case, my 4-inch Model 66 was used for that Rhode Island course, and this is next up for your consideration as your favorite out of this group of 10. And finally, we wrap things up with the video you just saw with my limited edition Smith & Wesson Model 469 rendered in a brushed nickel finish. And again, I very much like this pistol. As you saw, it did very well in the West Virginia course, or at least for demonstrating the West Virginia standards. Again, this is one that I'm very happy to have in my collection, and one that I really don't shoot very often because I want to keep it in just the condition that you see it in here. And there you have it, folks. That's a recap of all the handguns used in this last group of 10 qualification courses. As I said, voting will be open until Friday, April 16th of 2021. So if you're seeing this video after that time, don't bother sending in a vote, because by that time they will have been tabulated and a winner may well have been already chosen. Also, as I mentioned, I will let you know which pistol won in a future video, probably coming out on a Wednesday morning midweek update. In any case, that's it for now. See you next time, and until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.